the Green Party says it is the only party being honest about tax rises, with a plan for an extra £151 billion a year by 2029 in its manifesto.
Well, the party's two co-leaders say they would target the wealthy to invest in the NHS and other public services. Well, one of those co-leaders, Adrian Ramsay, is here now. Good to speak to you this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Your manifesto is there for all to see. Many things jump out, which would be good to talk about. One of those is your ambition to get to net zero by 2040. That is more ambitious than other parties. We wouldn't be surprised, would we, that the Green Party has a bigger ambition on that area. But at what cost does that come to for the public, for all of us? We know the benefit that you would argue, saving the planet, but what is it going to cost us?
Well, we're setting out our vision and we are being more ambitious than the other parties, both on the investment that's needed to restore our NHS and invest in social care and the education system, and, as you say, on tackling the climate crisis, and doing so in a way that tackles the cost of living crisis as well. Because if we look at some of the reasons why our bills have been going up and up, our energy bills, our food bills, it's because we're not resilient as a country. We're importing so much of our energy, reliant on international gas, which is subject to what's happening in terms of international conflicts. We have too much of our food is being imported. So if we support our farmers to produce far more of our food locally, and we're talking about far bigger grants for farmers, if we invest in renewable energy as the cheapest way to produce electricity, if we insulate homes around the country to bring bills down, keep homes warm, if we invest in public transport, these things are all about tackling the cost of living crisis and creating a healthier future,
so that's
as well as the environment.
That's the vision. So what is it going to cost us to fulfil your vision? Have you done the costing of what we are going to have to give up to get there?
We have indeed. We have got a fully costed manifesto that sets out exactly what we would invest, both in restoring the NHS...
Have you got an average cost to an individual?
So in terms of the impact on individuals, we are setting out where we would fund these improvements. One of those areas is that we would ask the very wealthiest in society. People
and that is what? Multimillionaires?
Multimillionaires, absolutely. People with 10 million and more in wealth and assets. We would introduce a wealth tax of 1% on those wealth and assets over 10 million and 2% on wealth and assets over $1 billion. That would give us around 15 billion a year by the end of this next Parliament. That's one of a package of changes that we're putting forward as part of asking those with the broadest shoulders to pay more.
But you want up to 151 billion of new taxes a year, don't you? Now, those that you're targeting, which most people watching this show, most people working on this show would say, yes, they're definitely very wealthy. They have the broadest shoulders to bear a tax burden. However, the argument is that they are those people with perhaps the loosest ties to living in the UK, and they would just go.
This argument is often used, isn't it? But I think there's a range
of
reasons why...
What's the answer to that argument?
There's a range of reasons why people live in this country. I think people who have a lot of wealth love this country like I do. They have family ties here, they have business ties here, which is not easy to just leave at a moment's notice. And when changes in the past
were brought in... It have to be a moment's notice,
when there were changes
enough
brought
of them
in...
to get from what you've costed to £151 billion.
So we've consulted with experts and researchers, academics on the wealth tax. There's a range of models for how it could be brought in. We've used some cautious figures in assuming how much it could raise, that even accounts for there may be a few who decide to leave. But if you look at what happened when changes to the non-dom status was brought in, there were lots of people warning that is this going to result in lots of people leaving? That didn't happen. And I think we can be bolder about the sort of country we want, one where we are investing in supporting those on the lowest incomes, one when we are making sure that everyone has access to an NHS dentist, so people are not having to either go without treatment or fork out to go private. And if we invest in those things...
Sorry, what about an 8% rise in national insurance for people making over £50,200 a year?
They're not the massive...
Right, they're not the richest in society. To give you an idea of it, I just had a little look. I mean, that's what a London Underground driver might earn in a year, a senior teacher and so on and so forth. These are people who are middle class that might reach that. That's who you're really punishing here, not the ultra-wealthy.
We're talking about a range of proposals, including the tax on multimillionaires, as I've said. And yes, in terms of national insurance, at the moment, those earning $50,000 and above actually pay a lower percentage of their salary on national insurance than people on lower incomes. And we're talking about a fairly modest change there to bring that into line. So, for example, someone earning $55,000 a year would be asked to pay £5 extra a week. And we think that's a good investment for the sort of society we want to have, because those very people, and I speak to people in that situation all the time, are currently forking out for a private dentist because they can't get an NHS dentist. They're paying sky-high figures for train tickets. They're paying huge amounts of money for food.
Other parties are also suggesting to tackle that, so I guess we're looking for the point of difference.
The difference is, and you've quoted yourselves this morning what the Institute for Fiscal Studies has said, that Labour's just not being honest about the money that's actually going to be needed if we're going to restore the NHS, if we're going to tackle the cost of living crisis. The Green Party is the only party being bold and honest in this election.
What they've said is that the problems are worse. And
there's a conspiracy of silence between Labour and the Conservatives in pretending that we can have European levels of health services with a US level of tax base. Actually, what the Green Party is proposing in terms of tax, if you look at it in a European basis, it's quite modest changes. Small amounts of money that would make a big difference. You would rejoin the EU, it seems, on your manifesto without having a referendum. But let's just park that for a second. Look, let's be clear. You're not going to be a party of government or a party of opposition. Your chief opposition here are the Labour Party. One of the things that they've done, or Keir Starmer has been clear about, is tackling anti-Jewish racism, anti-Semitism in the party. And that's happened over a number of years. You've currently got a number of prospective candidates who are suspended or under investigation. Can we be confident that you've done your due diligence to ensure that your party does not have anti-Semites and racists who people are going to vote for? Well, this is an important question, Rob, because the Green Party is strongly opposed to any form of racism.
But you have had problems this year with councillor standing and then celebrating in a way that has caused great offence.
What we have got is a process whereby if there's any questions raised around comments candidates have made or liked on social media...
There are 6 named by the Times who are still official
Do you mind if I just answer? I do want to answer your question.
I will, but listen, it's 7 minutes. So just pause. It's very important. Six candidates are still under investigation as we go in a few weeks' time to an election.
So we have a clear process for investigating any questions that are raised about candidates. That process is separate from the party's leadership, which governance bodies like the EHRC have said it needs to be for good governance practice. But we're very clear, if people make comments that are completely unacceptable, then there will be sanctions taken, and there have been against 4 candidates who were originally selected and are now not going forward and have been replaced with other candidates. And if there are comments that have been made about others that need to be investigated, that is happening and the appropriate action will be taken. Sometimes that's about training process and sometimes that's about a clear sanction. But we take these issues extremely seriously and there's no room for any form of racism in the Green Party or in politics more generally.
One last question, which I know the producers in the gallery will scream at me about. You want to stop frequent flyers. You've said that 15% of the population do 70% of the flying, and you're concerned about the damage that's to the environment. So that they're not the families, you argue, going on a holiday. They're the business. Have you costed the impact that will then have on business? And have you talked to the travel industry about stopping frequent flyers, what impact that would have on them?
So we've consulted a wide range of organisations in putting together our manifesto, and there's a number of organisations out there, like the New Economics Foundation, that have illustrated how a frequent flyer levy could work. The idea is that...
Have you talked to the travel industry specifically, who've been hit hard and are big employers?
I haven't personally. I'm confident my colleague who put the manifesto together has. But what I would say is aviation is a rising form of greenhouse gas emissions. And we've got an inequality here because, as you say, 15% of people take 70% of the flights. And
yeah,
so
but they're not evil people, are they? They're doing business. So
well, I mean,
it's
look,
a lovely vision, and I think people would back it.
In a post-COVID era, I think people know that you don't always need to get on a flight to hold a business meeting.
No.
Yes, maybe sometimes, but we also need to invest in the alternatives. I mean, train ticket prices in this country are astronomical, and I think people want to be able to do the cheaper, the greener thing, but it needs to be the cheaper and easier option. And just to answer Rob's question, no, we're not expecting to form the next government. But if we have a group of Green MPs in Parliament, we can push that next government to be bolder, because we're the only party that's saying we need to invest in the NHS, even if there's modest forms of tax rises to do so, and we need strong action to defend our environment. And people say to me on the doorstep all the time, we need to think about what the future's going to be like for our children and grandchildren, and that's why we need a group of Green MPs in this next Parliament.
Thanks very much, Adrian Ramsay. You know, I don't think many people here from the Green Party certainly put your case passionately.
Thank you.